Shema Beni,
Well, thank you, Craig Taubman, my old buddy. Haven't seen him for a while, but we haven't heard his music for a while. We were given permission to use his music during the pandemic, and since I think we can still continue. Anyway, Shema B'ni, a song of his, beautiful song of his, based on a phrase that we've seen a number of times in the book of Proverbs, obey or listen, my son. Another chapter of sentences or quips or two-liners in this section of Wisdom of Solomon section. And on the backdrop of trying to find wisdom in our everyday lives, in the communicative parts of our lives, as we speak with others, as we listen to the news, as we read, and hopefully some of the things that we see here, even though they might be common sense, we may have seen them many times beforehand, will help us hone our skills. Hone our skills. Yeah. Okay. Are there any comments or questions from last week or anything we've done beforehand? Okay, Malka, looks like you're going places. Malka? Looks like she's frozen, actually. Okay, anyway. There you go. Okay. So Eileen, why don't you bring us off? In my attempt to find the various smaller units, this is my division for this particular time. I found the following themes that were up at the top of speech, wealth, health, stupidity, and posterity. There are other ways that we could title them, I'm sure, but that gave me, and as usual, I looked for keywords or words from certain families, linguistic or semantic families. Yeah, so let's give it a try. So Eileen, if you would, the first section.
A wise son, it is through the discipline of his father. A scoffer, he never heard reproof. A man enjoys good from the fruit of his speech, but out of the throat of the treacherous comes lawlessness. He who guards his tongue preserves life. He who opens wide his lips, it is his ruin. A lazy man craves, but has nothing. The diligent shall feast on rich fare. A righteous man hates lies. The wicked man is vile and disgraceful.
Okay, reactions. I was liberal with the speech because not everything there's heard and speech and throat and tongue and lips, but there's also what does it mean that to crave something or to shall feast on something, not necessarily as food is concerned, but I think on consuming news, consuming words, consuming perhaps I might see that in a communicative fashion as well. And the same thing with lying and being vile is often done with our mouths, right? So the whole thing really, which brings me up to the top two verses, a wise son. I'll comment about the syntax there in just a moment, but the scoffer has never heard reproof. Maybe the discipline could also be seen here, not as in the rod, which we're going to meet the rod today. That one, it's not the famous quote, but it's from a similar quote. It's not necessarily about the smacking across the knuckles when you give the wrong answer or misbehave in class. Perhaps the discipline of the father are words of reproof that are referred to in the second one. So the whole thing could be about, I would say the whole thing's about communication. A word about, please interrupt me at any time, because I'm filling the vacuum because nobody wanted to say something, but if you do, just go ahead and say it. Um, the the first
I think we have Musar again.
more what?
The first line, Musar. We've had that a
Right.
number of times.
Yeah, yeah. So and hence the song from Craig Tallman, Shema B'ni Shema B'ni Shim EBT, which he added the Shim EBT, my daughter. But the next words of that are Musar very often, Musar Avicha, Val Titos Torah Timecha. But in Musar, it has to do, we've talked a lot about last week, the connection between discipline and learning, and why we use the term discipline when in the educational context as well, not just in reprimanding somebody. And Musar from not from that which is being passed down, but that which is painful. There's pain involved. The interesting thing in this sentence, Rabbi Malka, is that it seems to be missing a word like Ben Chacham.
Mhm. Right.
You
It
know,
should be a bait there, I think, before Musar. The
yeah, or
Musar.
right, or Mishum, or Biglal, or
Mhm.
because of Musar. So Fox gives a translation, um, a wise son, a father's discipline. In other words, it's almost as somebody saying, I understand it. See the wise son, father's discipline. It's almost showing a bodily motion with words. That's how I read it. As opposed to the lates, the good for nothing, never had the discipline. Um, and so there are a number of different types of parallelisms here, and so nobody actually suggests changing the word, amending the text here. We're going to see a bunch of emendations today. Maybe there are those that suggested, not that in what I saw. Okay. Um, an interesting use of the word nephesh on the fourth line. Nephesh is, we often think as a person, a soul, the being of somebody. In the first use, there's a threefold use of the word nefesh in the fourth line, in the seventh line, and in the eighth line. And in the first one, it actually doesn't mean self, right? In the latter part, it has to do with a lazy man craves but has nothing. It has nothing, is his self has nothing. Nefesh, self there, or nefesh chavutzim, the diligent, that is the selves of the diligent shall. But in the upper one, in the fourth line, it actually means throat or gullet. So if the nefesh was thought to be here, it's also part of the overall throat system of communication. That's a usage that's rather rare, I think, of the word nefesh. Um, okay, the first half of this section
Oh,
is,
I have a question.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, so in the fourth line, nephesh means throat. And I didn't catch what you meant of to what it means in the seventh line.
Okay, so let's look at those four lines there that are in English. A lazy man craves but has nothing, the diligent shall feast on. The word mitaveh is craving, ve'ein nafsho, va'ayin, excuse me, va'ayin, and has nothing.
Okay,
Nafsho atzel. So the translator here is lazy man, and nafsho atzel. You could just say atzel or atzlan, but it added the nefesh section, which it's in his being, in one's being. I guess it's an intensification of the laziness. Maybe that's
so
it.
that's pronounced nefsho.
Nafsho, right. And
Nefsho.
then yeah, because it's in a form, it's a form with, it has the
Okay,
the
so
the pronoun added.
it's
Mhm.
his being.
Yeah.
His
And
being.
then you have the nefesh
Okay.
charutzim. In this case, the diligent, charutz is to be diligent, and tidushen is feast on rich fare, or will be well fertilized or something like that. But adding the nefesh charutzim is I want to say the essence of the righteous or the essence of the righteous man. Or in this case, nefesh charutzim is instead of, it's using the plural of charutz as an adjective, and you can do that by, it's an adjective modifying nefesh. A little bit complicated, perhaps.
Okay, so nefsho in the 7th line and nefesh in the 8th line, do they both mean pretty much the same thing?
I think so, self, yeah. I was hoping for 3 different meanings, but I didn't get there.
All right, okay.
Okay. Now, Fox divides this section in an interesting way, and perhaps is that, well, no, I think it's right. The first part deals with the mouth, with speech. The middle part deals with consumption, because it's also through the mouth and the throat. And the last part ends with speech. So it focuses on this area of a person.
Mhm.
That's kind of the binding thing. When you get to these words, mipri, the third line, mipri pi-ish. Interesting, right? Mipri, from the fruit of, pi, mouth of a man. The fruit of the mouth of a man. What's the fruit of a mouth, of a person's mouth?
Words.
Words.
Word. Right. So go ahead and Eileen, read, what does Rashi say on this?
From the fruit of a man's mouth he will eat good, from the reward of his Torah. He will eat the good in this world, and the principle will exist in the world to come.
This idea of having deriving benefit from something in this world and also having it continue the world at the next world was thought rabbinic theology in terms of a bank account kind of a thing. You're not eating the principle, you're eating the principle remains. All those of us and people in my part of at my time of life having to think of what part of the savings goes to every day, what stays in the principle, what, and so this computation of reward and punishment done in rabbinic circles, and passed on to Rashi or passed on to us from Rashi, and makes a connection between the good that comes out of one's mouth and the other thing you do with your mouth, eating. And so therefore Rashi's comment really applies to the whole section. I enjoyed that. I haven't been looking at Rashi on a regular basis. I'm usually looking for when there's something is interesting, when I identify, at least to my eyes, something that seems like it would bring some interesting commentary. And that word, the fruit of one's mouth, will eat well. Yeah. Oh, because of the fruit of one's mouth. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, because of the way this was focusing on what happens in the throat and what happens in the mouth, I was reminded of this well-known psalm, which we say, part of the Psalm 34, which we say during the time of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, until after the end of Sukkot. And if you could read this also, this quote from Psalms 34, Eileen.
Who is the man who is eager for life, who desires years of good fortune? Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech. Shun evil and do good. Seek amity and pursue it.
Okay, and this is a far more famous text. It's famous because it's in the liturgy. It also became a song. So many of us learned this song as teenagers. Mi aish echafetz chayim ohev yamim liroto nitzor lishon chamera. And we often sing it during that time of year. I wanted to bring this not only because it's a familiar and connecting, and the same idea is found in this section of Proverbs, but also because it shows that some of the Psalms, like this Psalm, are wisdom Psalms. Not all Psalms are about praise or about complaint or about glory of God. This one is kind of a humanistic Psalm. This really doesn't have much to do with God. This section of the Psalm, at least. And so that's why I brought it here. Comments?
Bakay Shalom. I just don't like the way they translate it. I just think seek peace.
See, yeah, why
The
did they
last
use
line.
amity here? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, that would
Mhm.
be maybe because peace is on the next line or something like that, or maybe they use the word peace somewhere else. That's a good question. Yeah.
Think seeking peace and the only two things that if I remember correctly in Torah that you're told to pursue are you pursue peace and you pursue justice. Justice thou shalt pursue, and pursue peace. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the
So
only two things: peace and shalom and justice. The only
yeah.
two
So
things that we're ever told to pursue.
in English, pursue, but there are two different words in Hebrew, and the one for justice is a stronger word. They're dof tzedek, right? Tzedek tzedek tirdof.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's mevakshe, no, there's mevakshe der, mevakshe tzedek.
Right.
Maybe there's also bakashat tzedek, but the vakesh is to seek as opposed to the dof is to demand almost. Yeah,
Seek peace and pursue it.
yeah,
And
good.
justice thou shalt pursue. Right.
Mhm. Okay, and in this there's another here the parallelisms are more what we're used to, right? Shun evil or stray from, turn away from evil, and do good. Um, Turn towards shalom and pursue it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so it's seek and yeah, seek and they're both here. Okay, good. Um, Anything else? Okay. Um, Richard, are the waves of Malibu too loud for you to hear?
You know, I had to go outside. We're having the pond cleaned, and they needed me for something, so that's why I got up.
So you're back here?
I'm back home, yeah, until Friday. Then I'm going to down south.
Okay, all right. So we'll
Yeah, I
take
came back last
advantage
night.
we'll take advantage of your attendance and ask you to read 6 to 11.
Okay. Righteousness protects him. Righteousness protects him whose way is blameless. Wickedness subverts the sinner. One man pretends to be rich and has nothing, another professes to be poor and has much wealth. Riches are ransom for a man's life. The poor never heard of a reproof. The light of the righteous is radiant. The lamp of the wicked is extinguished. Arrogance yields nothing but strife. Wisdom belongs to those who seek advice. Wealth may dwindle to less than nothing, but he who gathers little by little increases it.
Okay. The first two, and I'll ask for reactions just a minute. The first two lines possibly could have gone with the upper section, but I thought also in terms of tzedakah, actually in this terms of not just righteousness, but actually giving away what you have. And risha, the opposite of that is not just wickedness, but being selfishness as well. Thought maybe that might be tied to this because the other words that stand out for me are the third and fourth line. There's one who pretends to be rich or becomes rich. Mitasher is presents oneself. Mitasher, or mitroshesh is to become poor. Kofer has to do with a ransom, which is a money or financial issue, and not just a metaphorically. The actual kofer means is a financial redemption. Oshro, wealth. Rash, poverty, or the poor person. So I saw here a question of wealth and possessions as the theme of um, this particular section. Uh, Comments or questions before I go into deeper?
I don't know, some of this seems like wishful thinking to me.
For instance,
Well, the poor never heard a reproof. The light of the righteous is radiant. The lamp of the wicked is extinguished. Arrogance yields nothing but strife. I mean, wisdom belongs to those who seek advice. I mean, yeah, it would be nice if that were always true, but it's only sometimes true.
right? So you're thinking of the time that we're living in right now.
Yeah,
particular.
or any time. I mean, I think this is true throughout all history. I mean, sometimes good people, why do bad things happen to good thing and good things happen to bad people? I mean, throughout the book of Proverbs, it's always like a lot of it just seems to me to be expressions of wishful thinking.
Well, perhaps, I mean, so are self-help books, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the purpose of that's the genre, I guess. Yeah, there's wishful thinking, which is working towards something in a positive way, and there's wishful thinking at the other edge of the spectrum is deluding oneself, is constant delusion, right?
If only the world worked this way all the time. It just doesn't.
Well, so I think that the author, the publishers of this book, they're kind of pushing people to be more like that. So I would say our challenge is how do we make these things true in our own lives? Okay,
Question?
yeah.
The two, I kind of don't understand the two lines in the middle. Riches are ransom for a man's life. I don't understand. I'm confused by that. The poor never heard a reproof. Those two lines together, the rest of it seems fairly straightforward, but those two lines, I don't understand.
Yeah, so you're in good company. I'm quoting Fox on this, who brings 3 or 4 different attempts to understand this from over the last 1,000 years or 800 years. This verse has not successfully been explained.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I quoted it on my notes here because I had a feeling that would come up. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with it either. Yeah.
But in a negative way, it's true. Riches are a ransom for a man's life. They can buy their way out of, so to speak, a get out of jail free card.
Right. As opposed to the poor people who have no way out.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting comment about race relations in the United States, for instance. Yeah, and generational wealth and things like that. Yeah, I think there's a lot that we could do with the particular thing. I didn't see any midrashim on it. I think I checked. It's often in these kinds of verses that I look for something. And let's also remember that so many of the verses, I don't know what percentage, but so many of the verses of the book of Proverbs are not commented upon in rabbinic literature or in medieval. If I was to do this right, in other words, this was an academic course, so I was going to maybe doing this next time. What I would do perhaps, which I thought I tried to do with Midrash Mishlei, but I came up empty. I'd said to you folks towards the beginning of this class that we're going to have, I'm going to try to follow what Midrash Mishlei brings on this, but it's so sporadic. And, I guess because I also, all the text from Midrash Mishlei, I have to translate myself. Malka, I did find 2 copies,
Mm-hmm.
but they were both like over $250.
Oh, wow. You sure? But I think mine was 40.
Yeah, so I think I just need to go back I think it's the kind of thing, I'll go back again. I said, it would be nice to have it, but not for $250.
No.
Because, the treasurer of Ora Midbar would never let me forget it. There was once a book, I think, that you remind me of. I think there was a book once that I purchased that was a lot. Oh, I remember once
There
saying,
was somebody who bought you a book that cost
right,
a lot.
that's right. I said, I wish if I would quote from ancient Near Eastern texts, I would, because it's a wonderful website, but I looked it up, it was like $200. So, the next day,
price.
one of
You
my
talking
members,
about Pritchard's Ancient Near Eastern?
yeah, yeah.
You can get that for fairly cheap. I just had a student get it. Maybe
Yeah, so
40,
maybe it was,
$50.
yeah, maybe I was looking at it at new, I don't know. I've had some bad experience with used academic books that they're marked up.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to concentrate on a book that has multiple lines, squares and underlines in pen.
Mm.
Okay, anyway, back to this. So a possible emendation mean changing the text. The 3 rules of emendation, as Professor Moshe Greenberg of blessed memory taught
Mhm.
us, is number 1, there's got to be a problem with the text. There was a time in late 19th, early 20th century where some scholars just made emendations left and right because they had some sort of a theory to what the text should be saying. So they kept amending. I have a book like that in my collection, which is fascinating. But this guy had this theory about a source of the Torah of the Nevi'im, and he just changed all sorts of verses to make it mention a name, Yerachmiel, that didn't appear in the text. So Greenberg would say there's got to be a problem in the text. Number two, you have to be able to. You should have an ancient. I don't remember. It was two or three. I get the order mixed up. There should be an ancient version of the text that reflects the Hebrew that you think should be written there, like the Greek or the Syriac or Aramaic, Dead Sea Scrolls. And the third one is you have to explain how it happened. In other words, you don't just change four letters to another word, which is four different letters. So the connection between a Dalet and a Resh, for instance, a Yud and a Vav, or because the copier's eye skipped to the same letter in the next word or previous, that kind of thing. So here we have in the last two lines, Hon mehevel yimat, the kovetz al yad yarbeh. So hon is wealth. Hevel, from hevel, hevel means nothing, like in Ecclesiastes, hevel havalim, and it is less than. So in other words, wealth may dwindle to less than nothing. That makes some sense, but
Maybe if you don't translate hevel, maybe if you translate hevel, like say like in Genesis, like a vapor, like hevel, a vapor. So wealth
vapor
is
means,
like a vapor that comes to nothing. That goes.
right, it comes to nothing, and that's how that was traditionally understood.
Mhm.
Except for the Septuagint has here mivuhal, hon mivuhal, which is just changing the hay and the bet. They're reversed. Hon mivuhal imat, money that is made quickly will dwindle to nothing, but the one who gathers little by little increases it. So as a couplet, it makes more sense with the emendation. It makes sense on its own, as you pointed out, Rabbi Malka, but not necessarily with the second line, or less so. Any case, that's one example of emendation. But anything else on this before we go on? Okay, so we go now to Midrash Tehillim, an example of. There's just one last thing. No, it'll be discussed here. The other thing that was Yesh mitasher ve'en kol mitroshesh v'hon rav. One man pretends to be rich, or pretend is one way of translating. Another way is becomes rich, yet has nothing. Both are possible with the Hebrew. The other is one who pretends or professes to be poor or becomes poor, but still has much wealth. So let's see what the rabbis have to say about this in Midrash Tehillim, Richard.
All right. A Psalm of David. The earth and its fullness belong to the Lord. As
All
it
right,
is
sorry. That's a quote from L'Adonai ha'aretz u'mlo'ah from Psalm 24, and then this is the beginning of the Midrash.
as it is written, I clothe myself with righteousness, and it clothes me. Rabbi Hanina said, there are those whose clothing is becoming, but they are not becoming to their clothing. And there are those whose clothing is not becoming, but clothing is becoming to them. There are those who are rich, but their name does not match their wealth. And there are those who are poor, but their name does not match their poverty. Similarly, Solomon said in Proverbs, one man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth.
Okay, and this goes on to talk about other things that have to do with perceptions, and he links it back to the fact that this is called the Psalm of David. in any case, and maybe the fact that when God, when you see the creation of the world, you're filled with, you understand what you're looking. You look at, there's no pulling the wool over your eyes. This is the magnificence of the world, which is the beginning of this song, that the earth belongs, earth and all that's in it belongs to God, was created by God. That there's no misunderstanding, or that shouldn't be misunderstood. Whereas people are often misunderstood. And then bringing our text as a proof text for this. In other words, appearances are not always what they seem. Is there any deeper meaning? I don't know. Anybody find anything deeper than that?
I guess my question would be pretends and professes. So I think I would have liked it as just said one man is rich and has nothing, and another is poor and has much great wealth. Why pretends and professes? It's almost like they're putting on an illusion.
Yeah, that's certainly how the Midrash understood it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that hitpael form
Right.
of being wealthy or being poor can be either, it could be makes oneself. It could be
Right.
one
Reflexive.
one who makes money
Mm-hmm.
and is still and doesn't have anything, and one who has become poor, made himself poor and has a lot. That would be closer to what you'd like to say. That's possible from the Hebrew itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I don't know. I guess there's, yeah, I don't know. I don't have. I mean, I think one of the things that,
Or one who enriches himself, right? And
yes,
has nothing.
one who impoverishes
And
oneself.
one who impoverishes himself, who takes like a vow of poverty or something, but
And
has
maybe,
much wealth.
right. So then is the wealth, in other words, is talking two different kinds of wealth. I think something you brought up at the top of the hour, which is there's wealth, which is material wealth, financial wealth, and there's wealth, which is spiritual or intellectual wealth. Yeah. Yes, Rita Claire.
There's another type of wealth. Whenever I've mentioned to some people that I have 8 children, they've often referred to me as being very rich.
Yeah.
So there's different types of wealth.
Sure. Social wealth. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't, I think, but it seems that most people go to the simplest way of understanding this, and not to say this is the right way, but is this kind of the Warren Buffett example. Doesn't he eat like at Burger King every day or something? Did I not read that someplace or know that? Yes?
Wouldn't doubt it.
What's that?
I would not doubt it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's
And
that
drives
type
like,
of person.
and drives an old
Probably
Toyota.
owns Burger King.
That could be. I think he still pays for it. Okay, or or other people that that we find out afterwards that they're stupendously wealthy, yet they have not
They don't flaunt their wealth.
they have
Right.
not become poor of character. Let's call it
Like,
that one.
wasn't Rabbi Akiva, wasn't he very poor? But
Yeah,
in actuality, he was wealthy in terms of wisdom and knowledge.
there you go. There you go. Okay. All right. Anything else on this section? Okay, let's move on to oh, I had already turned the page. Let's move on to the section that I entitled wealth. Excuse me, health. From wealth to health. And this has to do with not only physical health, but emotional health as well. Okay, Megan, would you like to read because you are our expert in emotional health?
Um,
We're at 12:15.
12 to 15. Hope deferred sickens the heart. Yeah. But desire realized is a tree of life. He who disdains a precept will be injured thereby. He who respects a command will be rewarded. The instruction of a wise man is a fountain of life, enabling one to avoid deadly snares. Good sense wins favor. The way of treacherous men is unchanging.
Okay, I singled out Megan because her profession was as therapist. Um, and I think we all have some experience either giving or receiving. And we understand the issue of expectations and constant letdowns. The second verse led me to think of maybe, but desire realized as a tree of life is, I wonder what I would do with this. Many of you remember there was a time I went to train at Beit Tshuva for spiritual counseling for addiction. And that project at that place whose name we don't mention will never ended up happening. But I'm constantly on the lookout. What kind of text would I use as a rabbi with people who are working through their addiction issues? And I don't know what I think about this one because the tava ba is like, your tree of life is when you get what you desire, and I'm not that's a complicated statement to make. Uh, for people who are in constant desire of something will kill them. What do you think, Megan? Any thoughts on that?
Um, Definitely. Constant desire is met by disappointment all the time.
Mm.
But desire realized is a tree of life.
Mm.
So that's not constant desire. Hope deferred sickens the heart. That's true. With sometimes you can just hope so much that it never happens.
Right.
And it does sicken the heart in a metaphorical way, or could in a physical way too. But desire realized is a tree of life.
But my first,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'd have to ask the person now, could you describe to me what you mean by desire?
Mm.
Because people will say a word and I need to know what they mean by it.
Spoken like a true therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with
My
addiction, they physically crave certain substances, but that's not their real desire. That's why it's not their tree of life. Their desire is to be whole.
Yeah,
That's a
with
good one.
addiction, I don't think there's a desire to keep doing the drug or
Right.
alcohol or whatever it is
Right.
you want. It's horrible. But the desire, if seen in a spiritual sense,
Mm-hmm.
is realized. That is a tree of life for an addict. Yeah,
Right.
you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one way or another, this is kind of, armchair psychology here, I guess, in these two lines here. The idea of tochelet mimushechet, of giving hope deferred, could also be translated as constant leading somebody, misleading somebody, a constant misleading somebody or
Right.
promising something and not fulfilling. The first lesson I got in that is at my first synagogue in Jerusalem. It was the second one, but I was the first. I was the rabbi. I was educational director. The first one, it was structured differently, and I think I had planned like 4 or 5 courses. Why I was totally overambitious. A week to do because I was rearing to go. I was out of the Bible department. I had so much to offer, and we had kids in this, and I ended up realizing that I was just too many. So I canceled one of the courses. Apparently, one of the people who was interested called the president to complain. President said to me, David, I'm going to give you some really good and important advice. Never take away from the people. Best you don't talk about it, but don't let the people feel that you have given them something, but you've taken it away. And that's kind of been a guide, when people are angry when they feel something's been taken away from them. And that's an insight into American psyche as well, I think, especially of supremacy. I felt that when I got more involved in what was happening in the United States was when Obama was the president. It seemed to me like people were angry because something had been taken away from them, their perceived supremacy. And And then on the other hand, in the African American community or in the Native American community or other minorities, this idea of this promise of something, well, you're not slaves anymore. You're not slave. Now everything's open for you, is also this giving of false hope, without putting actual policies, structural changes to the economic system. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts on this. There is an interesting from the different things that come up that we talk about, like the structures of the parallelisms here, or the fact that there's wisdom literature in Psalms, or little things like that. Here's another little lesson that I bring you from Fox. If you look in the Hebrew, for those who can read the Hebrew, in the 5th and 6th lines, Torat Chacham Makor Chayim Lasur Mimukshe Mavet. There's a lot of mems there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 mems. 5 mems, saying that it's not the mnemonic aspect of it, to be able to remember it as oral literature stands out, like the blessing to the tribe of God in Genesis that Jacob gives to his sons. God gadud yigudenu hu yagud akev God. A lot of God there, right? God gadud. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, the last 2 lines, Sechel tov yitain chen, good sense wins favor or produces favor, will result in favor. That makes sense, whatever. And then you get, but the ways of the dishonest or the disloyal or the treacherous are ever lasting and unchanging. That's what etan means. And this is where Fox suggests an emendation, V'derech bogdim idam will be the end, their end, the end of them will result, as opposed to, yeah, it'll be the end. How do we say? Yeah, it'll be their, I'll put an end to you. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and if you would read, Megan, the section from the Talmud as well.
Rabbi Haya bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, anyone who prolongs his prayer and expects it to be answered will ultimately come to heartache, as it will not be answered. As it is stated, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And what is the remedy for one afflicted with that illness? He should engage in Torah study, as it is stated. But desire fulfilled is the tree of life. The tree and a tree of life is nothing other than Torah. As it is stated, it is the tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and those who support it are joyous.
Okay, Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba, from our liturgy as well, which is from Proverbs. An interesting example, rare example of Proverbs, of a line from Proverbs becoming part of our liturgy. So much is from Psalms or from the prophets. Okay, so any reactions to this?
I sort of like this. If I take it that if you keep praying and praying for something, expect an answer, it just brings heartache because you never get anything direct. But if you study Torah, which is the tree of life, if you keep studying, the answer may come to you through the study.
That's true.
And I would take this as a great advice for many of my colleagues and for myself at this time of life, at this time of history, where there's so much that we wish was not the case. We kind of pray was not the case. We complain a lot about it. We talk about it, but the cushion that I have in my life, I think, but maybe I'm speaking for some of you as well, the cushion being the nechama, the comfort is Torah study, is intellectual pursuit.
Mhm.
I mean, for others, it would be artistic work as well, artistic creativity. how does one process the world one surrounding through different various art forms. Yeah. Okay.
Does prolonged prayer mean the length of the prayer, or does it mean asking for the same thing over and over again?
I think in the context of that sugya there, it's the length of the prayer. That's
And
a,
not
that,
asking over. Mhm. See,
yeah,
I
that's,
take it the other way, because if you keep asking for the same thing over and over again and you're not getting an answer, so you're just gonna come to heartache. And I think you probably only need to ask once. I mean, God doesn't forget, right? Why keep asking?
well, I think that has to do with what is prayer for? Is prayer
Mm,
for, I
right,
mean, does God even need, I mean, you think God can see in any case, right?
right.
God can sit on God's own. Prayer is for us to give, it's part of our talk therapy.
Mm,
Yeah. So,
mm.
I
okay,
have a question.
yo,
It says, anyone who prolongs his prayer and expects it to be answered will ultimately come to heartache. Then why, as a child, when I went to synagogue, especially when we were a conservative synagogue, did the services and the prayers seem painfully endless?
so if I could paraphrase it,
Because they were.
why did it go on for so damn long? Goddamn long.
Yes, exactly.
They
Yeah.
still do as an adult.
That's true. Well, the Shabbat liturgy is like one long prayer.
Yeah. So Malka, I don't know if you know this, but in Ora Midbar, Kabbalat Shabbat is 40 minutes. Sometimes it's more if I speak a little bit too long in our study at the beginning of the prayer.
Mhm.
And Shabbat morning is an hour and a half, which is basically 35 to 40 minutes of prayer, and the rest is study. That's kind of my guidelines.
And it's
Those are
delightful.
yeah.
Right. That would be
Uh,
nice.
and,
Everybody should follow that example.
yeah, I know, but so you'd think that people would be flocking to our synagogue, huh? Hey, we want, no, people like I think part of the experience of going to synagogue in a big city building is being uncomfortable and bored for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Then they feel, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I can have a little atonement, right? That's a little bit of uh, you punishment for my.
Well, if you could reproduce yourself in other places in the United States, you would have a flock.
Oh, there you go.
I
Yeah,
said that to you before.
right. Malka's been trying to get me to move to Baltimore. All right, maybe in another lifetime, but who knows? Okay, then. Anything else? So, Manny, would you walk us through 16 to 21, please?
Every clever man acts knowledgeably, but a dullard exposes his stupidity. Harm befalls a wicked messenger. A faithful courier brings healing. Poverty and humiliation are for him who spurns discipline, but he who takes reproof to heart gets honor. Desire realized is sweet to the soul. To turn away from evil is abhorrent to the stupid. He who keeps company with the wise becomes wise, but he who consorts with dullards comes to grief. Misfortune pursues sinners, but the righteous are well rewarded.
Hey, any
Hmm.
thoughts?
There's that word again.
Which one, the reward or the
No,
righteous?
the Kislim.
Oh, Ksilim, yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can see on the Hebrew, those that read, the word appears 3 times in this section,
Right.
which led to my title of the idiots, right? There were the
Yeah.
stupid. Yeah, yeah, very much so. This is what else can I say about this? It's in the second line where it says, but a dullard, and also dullard and yeah, it's translated dullard twice and stupid once. And Malka, I think they do that because they have in mind they don't want to repeat the same word over and over again, even though it is in the Hebrew. But the second line we begin with the first line. First line is that kol arum. Arum, we have this word that we had not recently, we had it quite a bit a few months ago.
Mhm.
Arum often
In
means
Genesis.
yeah, the snake is arum.
Mhm.
It has to do with nakedness, but it's also less clever, more sneaky. And here it is, here it's clever. In the book of Proverbs, it seems to be, I don't know if it's always, but most, I think all the times that we've seen until now, it's in a positive sense. Clever, shrewd, as opposed to negatively shrewd or sneaky. And then, so that person, whatever they do it consciously. They're self-aware, mindfulness. They're very mindful, right? On the other hand, you could translate it uxil ifrosh ivelet, but Fox also here suggests an emendation, but it's not an emendation of the letters themselves, but it's of the vocalization, the vowels, and uxil yafrish ivelet, and the dullard spews stupidity. Yeah.
Mm,
You know,
Okay. I don't
better.
know.
I like that.
and one thing I keep thinking through all of this is it sort of seems to divide up. This one's a dullard, this one is smart, this one is this. But if I bring it inside myself, there are certain times when I have said something that I'm not really don't know what I'm talking about. And I'll make an exclamation and I can think you sound like a dullard exposing your stupidity. So I take all of this as different parts of me inside, not he's
Right.
this,
Yeah.
she's that.
I'm wondering if we might call that a post-Freudian take on the
Yeah.
Book of Psalms, right?
Book of, yeah.
Right. How much
Book
were
of
people
Proverbs.
aware? Although the rabbis do talk about the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer HaTov. There are two inclinations in one human being.
Right.
But absolutely, I'm totally with you, Megan. All these things, they apply, all of them apply to each of us, each and every one of us, different times of our lives, different times of the day, in different social situations. Yeah. About speaking when you don't necessarily know what you're talking about, Zakovich, I heard him give the same anecdote a few times. He's quoting from a book of somebody wrote some humor about the generation of the Palmach in Israel, the 1940s in Israel, those that defended and the elite fighters and those that went on to be Ben Gurion's whole Ashkenazic leadership, not entirely, but mostly. And where one of the ideologues came to a kibbutz to give a lecture, but he left his notes. He forgot his notes. So in this book, it said on his notes, he wrote, his lecture is printed out, and he wrote on the side, the reasoning here is flawed. Raise your voice. Right. Sometimes the most animated we get about something is when we have the least basis for it.
Mm.
There's that would be a case of a not so smart person spewing his stupidity. Okay.
You said Fox that spreads out his stupidity?
From Yafrish, spew.
Spew. I like that better, I think.
Yeah.
Because especially because the Osla is under the resh. Really like spreading it out and making it a conjunctive to the next word.
Yeah. Okay. One last comment here again about wording and text. We haven't spent a lot of time on that. To me, it's a little bit less interesting. And although he has in the back of his commentary, or towards the after the regular commentary, he has just textual notes, and I rarely look there because, the Fox's commentary are two of these. Right. So this is the second half. And each one is 1,200 pages. So there's only so much, that I put into this, and I want to look sometimes at other commentaries. But I will say that I do pick up on the things that he includes in the regular commentary, textual issues like I have today about emendations. He has a nice comment here that I like. Look in the fourth to last line in the penultimate section in the Hebrew. You'll see there's a word in round parentheses, and there's a word in square parentheses, then round. When you have it in round, that in biblical quotes, that means that's the way it's written in the scroll. But when you have it in brackets, it means that's from the notes of the Masoretic notes that tell you it's written this way, but you read it another way. That's an older form, a medieval form of textual emendation as well. But he makes the comment here that the way that people understand holech et chachamim, the one who walks with wise people, he himself will become wise, right? Move into a good neighborhood kind of a thing. Echoed in Pirkei Avot, of course, right? But it also makes sense, haloch et chachamim, v'chacham. The same thing, if he has been walking with, it's descriptive as opposed to prescriptive. That's all. So both of them make sense. Sometimes, though, what's in the parentheses makes no sense at all. Okay. And Malki, you want to do last one, 22, 25?
A good man has what to bequeath to his grandchildren, for the wealth of sinners is stored up for the righteous. The tillage of the poor yields much food, but substance is swept away for lack of moderation. He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him early. The righteous man eats to his heart's content, but the belly of the wicked is empty.
Mm.
Okay. Comments? I figured people would jump on he who spares the rod.
Yeah.
A lot of them made a comment on that. The word discipline, again, I don't speak Hebrew, but I mean, discipline has two meanings. It could be, here it's meant physical discipline, but I always think of the word discipline to mean like self-discipline, when you make a commitment to a diet or a gym regimen or a reading regimen. That's discipline too, but that's not, a rod has nothing to do with that type of discipline.
Right, but a rod has to do with the kind of, it's, young man, you need to be disciplined. You will be
discipline. Someone having
punitive.
discipline upon another person as opposed to one disciplining oneself.
Right, and Richard, were you here last week? Maybe you weren't around last
I was
week.
here last Wednesday. I wasn't here last Thursday.
Oh, so what we also spoke about the fact that how's that connection to the disciplines that you study at school?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. So here it is. It's that word musar that originally comes from pain, inflicting suffering. Okay, why did I say?
Yeah, again, but discipline can be a joyful thing too. I mean, if you make a commitment to study and then then you learn something and have wisdom, then there's, or if you go on a diet and discipline yourself to that, you lose weight and you're happy about that.
Yeah.
Although it might be painful to be on a diet, I suppose.
And for some of us more than others.
Yeah.
So the Chosech Shivto Soneh B'no is something that you hear in Israeli. It's a phrase that came into modern Hebrew. It's used in modern Hebrew as well. Chosech Shivto, that kind of thing. So, which means that it probably survived well in literature about education. In the Jewish literary tradition throughout the Middle Ages as well. That would be my guess. I don't have really the books or the particular computer program that I used to have, the database that I had for many years, the Bar-Ilan database. I could easily look up to see where that phrase falls in all of Jewish literature, Hebrew literature. I don't have that program anymore, but that's what I would look towards. And of course, that's not in vogue today at all, right? Yeah, and is it talking about hatred? Is it talking about the person who doesn't discipline? Does he really hate his kids? No, very often it's from an abundance of love. But what the author is trying to say is that you may think that you're loving them, but you're doing more damage. You actually are not showing them love.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the second line. I'm not sure what it means. for the wealth of sinners is stored up for the righteous. What I think of the earlier in our session, with the line on the previous page, where he says, he who gathers little by little increases it. And here the wealth of sinners is stored up for the righteous. This notion of storing, gathering, storing, it made me think of the story of Joseph in Egypt, where he had the dream about the coming famine, and he said, you've got to store up, told Pharaoh, you've got to store up grain so that to be prepared for the coming famine. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's a connection, the connection just popped into my mind, that's all. But I don't understand how the wealth of sinners is stored up for the righteous. I kind of don't get that.
So I think I would see it as a couplet. I would take it together with the first sentence, or with the first line.
Mhm.
The good man it's almost the same, I'm going to paraphrase, the good man is always bequeathing his grandchildren wealth. You might say, but he has nothing. He has no generational wealth. And the wealth that is meant here is because the wealth that the wicked have, it's going to go to them.
Mhm.
In other words, it's going to even out. God is going to it's going to balance the weight, balance the,
Oh, it's okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I think.
But when you say, or when they say here, a good man has what to bequeath to his grandchildren in terms of not necessarily material wealth, are they talking about what is known as an ethical legacy?
I think so. Behavioral wealth, I would call it.
Yeah.
We talked about spiritual wealth, financial, social wealth, familial wealth we talked about today. So there's one, let's call it behavioral health.
Well, okay.
Look it's challenging for me and
Mhm.
Sasha. We raised our children one way, and we're very proud of how we did, and we don't see them doing that with their children at all. And it's a generational thing. I'm sure others have seen, I would imagine others have seen it as well, but there's a real difference. It's not like it doesn't matter, because when we see them from 6 months to 3 months to 3 months, whatever it is, we just had the grandchildren with us, has implications to how they interact with other people, how they interact with us. We know we're not idealizing how our children, our older daughters especially, interacted with our parents. The younger ones didn't really know Sasha's parents, but and how it's an interesting thing. Anyway, so I moved to talk about behavioral health, wealth,
Mm.
behavioral health. Yeah. Um, okay, so one last thing. So Harold, why don't you read Rashi on this last section here?
Okay. A good man will leave an inheritance of his merit and his property to his sons' sons, but a sinner does not leave over an inheritance to his sons, for his wealth and his property are laid away for the righteous.
Now, we thought it was speaking symbolically, as we said, behavioral, philosophically, but now he's going to bring it home, the Midrash.
As it is written in Esther, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman.
So in the story, and you see what I did here, right, Richard? You see what I did here, right? Because we're coming into Purim. Of all the comments, I chose this one because also I could do it in 3 lines. It would not necessitate using another piece of paper, but because it's Purim tomorrow evening, in that's part of the moral story. A student of mine asked me yesterday, so what's the significance of the book of Esther? Well, there's a few significances, but one of them is that the quintessential challenge of the Jew in the diaspora is that they're always going to hate us. They're going to try to kill us. We're going to overcome them, and then we'll eat, right? But another essence of what was the importance is the fact that even the wealth was redistributed. So the redistribution of wealth from the evil, to how we perceive it, how the story is told, to the righteous. An interesting case of of a vision of justice. Yeah. Yeah, I need to think more about this when it comes to reparations. I'm on a committee discussing the issue of reparations here in the state of California and a Jewish presence in that conversation, and been asked to work on a letter and add the Jewish parts. So I'm wondering if there's anything here for us. Okay, so restorative justice is kind of what this midrash is talking about in a very particularistic way, and brings us up to Purim.
Mhm.
So for those of you I won't see tomorrow, happy Purim. Next week, yes, I'll be teaching next week. Yeah. I have some travel, but I worked it in such a way that I'll teach. And that's it. Okay. Thanks for being here. Malka, thank you especially because you're obviously on your way from one point to another and you stopped for this. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Madalena, for running the show.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, Rabbi, this is a little bit of what you just said. It's not really on Proverbs, but when you said that you're writing the Judaic part for reparations, I just thought about the case of the stolen beam. I don't know if you included that in your presentation.
No, I'm actually, it's adding to a letter of support to politicians and to add for a
Oh, okay.
bill. So that's a little bit too much to put in there, but yeah, we use that story. Yeah.
Hmm.
We use that and the Israelites who borrowed things from their captors. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Borrowed is putting it nicely.